Can I call you Cousin Tom?
Sure. We're both Bennett, so. I'm Tom Bennett. You're listening to Gospel Tangents.
The best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. Hey, come along with me. We're going to go out to Centennial Park. Now, this is a group that split off from the FLDS church back in 1984. And I went on a road trip and went to church with them. And so come along with me. We're going to tour the town. All right, here I am. I'm on my way to Centennial Park. I'm driving through the thriving metropolis of Hurricane, Utah, which has probably never been hit by a hurricane, I'm guessing. And I'm going to take a left here. This is the main road.
Take left on State Highway 59 South, East 100 South.
Okay, there you have it. That's where we're going. And it's probably another half hour out to Centennial Park in Colorado City. And we'll probably show you Bees Market again.
Continue for 22 miles.
22 miles to Bees Market, I think, or so, roughly. So anyway, looking forward to it, and come along the ride. Just thought I'd give you a little hint. Oh, here's Hurricane over there. You can see. I'm sure Paul Reeve would be proud to see his hometown. But yeah, big hill rock thing, and quite the nice view of Hurricane over there. So for those of you who've never heard of Centennial Park, I'll give you a little brief history here really quickly. So they were actually part of what many of you have heard of, the FLDS church. And they split, I believe, the years 1986, which was 100 years after 1886, after the John Taylor revelation that said, basically, that polygamists believed was the revelation that polygamy should never be removed from the earth. And so basically the split in, I believe it was 1986, occurred over what's called one-man rule. So Rulon chefs, who's Warren Jeff's father, as I understand it, and maybe when we do our interview, they'll correct me, but my understanding of the story is that Rulon Jeffs wanted to create kind of an LDS-style leadership with a prophet, kind of the one-man rule, and because previously the polygamists have what's called a council of seven or a council of friends, where there were seven leaders in a quorum that were kind of leaders of the community, and Rulon Jeffs wanted to kind of take charge and that sort of a thing. So several leaders split off. They're actually near the town of Short Creek. I tried to type in Centennial Park, Arizona. I don't think that's actually, I think it's a subdivision. I don't think it's actually a town, but I'll find out more as I get there. But I'm heading out there. So it's basically kind of the Short Creek area. And we're going to be driving by Bees Marketplace on the way there. And so that's your, thumbnail sketch of the difference between FLDS and Centennial Park. I will just mention one other thing. From what I understand, FLDS is very distinctive with its kind of pioneer dresses, especially on the women. And the Centennial Park group is more... like they just dress modern. So you wouldn't necessarily recognize them by the way they dress. So anyway, I want to show you some of the scenic drive here. I'm about 15 minutes out, I believe. Getting ready to cross. I don't know if I'm in Arizona or Utah at this point, but I think I'm still in Utah. So anyway, this is the drive that you can kind of see. There's a lot of bluffs out here, and it's very Utah desert landscape, that's for sure. So we just passed the sign that says Hilldale. So we are in Hilldale, Utah right now. Town's a little farther out, but here's your scenic drive into Hilldale. All right, we're starting to get into Greater Hilldale. So, here we are. All right. So this is Colorado City, Arizona. That kind of looks like a church. Wonder if that's an LDS church or a fundamentalist church. Hard to tell. Let's see what it says here. Nothing. Because I heard that the LDS church was moving back here, but I don't know. So anyway, I don't think I've been to this part of town before. Boy, that's a nice looking house. All right, so this is not only the high school, but it's the church. And that's where we just had church there. It's a big parking lot. It was a very large gathering, I would guess. Probably about 1,000 people. Oh, that red car I got to follow, so I'll follow you. All right, everybody. I wanted to give you guys an update on church today. it was really interesting. It was 2.5 hour sacrament meeting, but they didn't pass the sacrament. So I hung out with my friend Tom Bennett, and that was really interesting because church started at 2, but he told me that I should get there at 1, which I thought was kind of strange, but okay, whatever. And I had to get gas because I was short. So that slowed me down. I was a little bit late. So I met him there and found out that 1 o'clock, he said that if you don't get there by 1, you're not going to get a good seat. So, yeah. So anyway, I walked in, I met Tom. He'd already received a seat I was on the 5th row, right smack dab in the middle. Couldn't have been any more in the middle than I was. So it was a lot of fun. So he told me that they have priesthood meeting on Saturday night. And I said, oh, I wish you'd let me know. I would have come. And he goes, yeah, you can't come. So that's funny. And I met his wife, so that was cool. So shout out to Amanda. And what was the other thing? Apparently they don't have Relief Society. I found that out. So yeah, I got there about 1:15. Killer seats right up front. It was pretty large. Kind of wanted to take a picture. I think I got one picture. Hopefully that's okay. But they met at a high school, but it was like a chapel. But they had a balcony. You don't normally see that. So I don't know if that was. I guess I don't know. I guess it was normal. That church that I did see is an LDS church that they're building in the area, so that was interesting. I asked if they were getting better relations with the LDS church, and kind of yes, it seems like. So that's great. So his wife told me so we sat there for 45 minutes and listened to the choir practice, and so that was good. Even during, so LDS church services, especially before the meeting, can be a little rambunctious, but no children under 8 come to sacrament meeting. So you have to be at least 8 years old to come to sacrament. And I keep calling it sacrament meeting. I should probably just call it a worship service. But that was the other thing, because they're expected to do sacrament at home. You just bless the sacrament yourself, I guess, and administer it. And so they don't administer sacrament during the service. So that was interesting. So his wife said, yeah, tell Rick that it's generally a 2-hour service. Ours went 2.5. So I'm very, very reverent. I think that's because you don't have little babies and kids going around. So generally the mothers who are nursing, especially, or who have young children, they just stay home. So they've got a camera, which I did not see. I think it's built in somewhere. I didn't even see it, but I did hear it referenced during the service, so that people can watch it from home. Tom told me that at priesthood meeting yesterday, this blew my mind, there were 500 men there for priesthood meeting. And I was like, wow. And
So they've got, kind of a regular chapel, but with the balcony. Kind of reminded me of a modern version of the tabernacle, the old Salt Lake Tabernacle with the wood pillars, and also the stone church in Independence, which also has the wood pillars. So there were people up on I don't know if that's, the balcony, I guess. But it also doubles as a high school, so I assume they have assemblies there and stuff, I guess. I mean, the interesting thing is the podium said holiness to the Lord, which in the LDS church, typically we reserve that for the temple, like holiness to the Lord. That's on temples. So it was interesting to see it in a, I mean, I guess you could call it a church. I remember walking up and I was like, this doesn't look like a church. But anyway, I'm going to come back tomorrow because Tom told me to drive around and see stuff, but I got invited to dinner after the meeting, and so and then it goes dark, and so I didn't get to. So I'm going to stick one around one more day because I got some flexibility, and so I'll take you on a tour of Centennial Park, and you'll just go with me. I kind of got a little bit lost on the way there, but so anyway, so the church service starts, and I have to say it was a rousing hymn. Like they were just. It's not, sometimes the LDS is like they're sleeping through the song and it's not very rambunctious. And this was like people were singing their guts out, almost like the MTC. I remember the MTC, I was like, wow, people really sing. And so that was cool. That was great. Everybody stood for the opening hymn. And apparently, I remember thinking at the end of the meeting, God, they didn't even have a restroom. We've been sitting here for 2.5 hours. And at the end of the meeting, the guy conducting the meeting goes, oh, we forgot to have a restroom. I guess that's my fault. And they were like, yeah, it's your fault. So anyway, I forgot to do the middle hymn. But so it was funny because it's really quiet because there's no kids. Very reverent. So they don't like it when people leave. Oh, this was another interesting thing. So Tom warned me, he's like, so if you need to go to the bathroom, like, don't go during the meeting or they might call you out. And I was like, oh, really? Okay, I'll make sure I go. And so that was kind of strange. And then there was, during the meeting, towards the end of the meeting, there was this really faint alarm. And, and so that was the other interesting thing. I remember looking over to my left and there were 6 rows or so of, I thought, I guess I'm getting old because I thought they were Aaronic priesthood youth or something. But then I found out they were missionaries. I'm like, wow, the missionaries, I guess, man, they look young, but maybe that's because I'm old. But anyway, so there were about 30 missionaries there. Everybody, I think I was wearing this red tie or blue tie and red shirt. And I kind of had the sweatshirt because I didn't want to take my coat. And I was definitely the most casually dressed person. Everybody, I did not see any other shirt but a white shirt. So I was definitely a little different there. But anyway, so the alarm goes off and I saw a brother, a missionary apparently, walk out the door but it was pretty quiet. It wasn't a loud alarm. And since it's part of the school, I don't know, the alarm went off. So I guess he went and turned off the alarm because when he came back in, the guy conducting the meeting was like, so what was that all about? And he goes, the alarm went off. He goes, really? I didn't even hear it. And then he goes, did you guys hear it? And we're all like, yeah, we heard it. He's like, wow, my hearing must be going. But anyway, yeah, it was very quiet. But yeah, so the meeting starts with an opening hymn, and then they just randomly pick people out of the audience. And so, guy about 3 down from me on my left was the first speaker and gave really interesting. So nobody has anything prepared. Although I did notice that people had little note cards like, in case I get called, I'll have this quote from the Journal of Discourses or whatever. So that was pretty interesting. So, but yeah, and then the guy on the row in front of me, just to my right, he got called next, and they would just pick random people. And then after a while, they started picking people off the stand. Oh, it was funny because I know this guy, met him like 2 years ago from Centennial Park. And the guy conducting the meeting goes, "Is Jackie here?" I don't know if that was a guy or a girl, but it was a girl. And Jackie, raise your hand if you're here. And there's nobody raised their hand. Um, and then I actually got to meet Jackie after the meeting when because she was home. She was one of those nursing mothers. And so that was interesting. And then he just picked, but yeah, so she was the only woman that they picked and she wasn't there. I think there must have been 9 or 10 men that picked, but they run it by the Spirit, and it was really, really good. Another thing that I noticed, in LDS churches, it's common to end your talk or whatever in the name of Jesus Christ, amen, and then the whole audience says amen, usually pretty quietly, but this was like a hearty amen. So that was kind of interesting. And the music, when people sing, they like belted it out. Like it was not like the sleepy LDS hymn. So that was also interesting. But yeah, it definitely kept my attention, kept me on my toes. So I was sitting next to Tom Bennett, and then the last speaker, which was actually the guy conducting the meeting, wish I knew his name, but anyway, he kept saying Brother Bennett. For the first time he said Brother Bennett. And he's like, and then he's going to come up and sing because Tom Bennett's a country singer and I'm not. So when he said sing, I was like, oh, that's definitely not me. And I did ask Tom before the meeting. I was like, so, because he warned me, you just pick people. It does remind me a little bit because I remember, this makes me sound really old, but I remember back in the 70s, I was one of those little kids that would get up for fast and testimony meeting and be like, I know the church is true, whatever. Love my mom and dad, name Jesus Christ, man, whatever. Like I would do it every single month. And then my parents were like, you don't have to do that every month. So I think I like skipped a month or two. And it happened to be Ward Conference. And I'm like, I think I was like 8 years old. I'm pretty sure I was 8. I was really young. And apparently they had noticed that I hadn't come up to give my testimony for a month or two. And they asked me to speak. And I was like, are they talking to me or my dad? Because my dad has the same name. And they're like, no, that's you. And I was like, okay. I ended up there. And so the whole, that's back in the 70s. So the style of church, it reminded me of kind of 70s style church. And in fact, the hymns, I will show you a picture of the hymn book. The first one I picked up, the copyright was 1979, but I didn't get a picture of that. But I got these other ones from 1948, but they looked identical, and I guess they were pretty identical. There was a red one that I don't remember seeing. I remember the blue ones, but I think it was 85 when they came out with the green hymn books that we currently use, and I guess we're getting an update. So, but anyway, yeah, that's how the whole meeting was they would just pick people, except for Tom did tell me that that this one guy was kind of give a little bit of a history lesson during the service. And I think he's in the Council of Seven, I think. And so he got up and because he talked about Rulon Jeffs, which surprised me, although I talked to somebody about that after, and he's like, yeah, you shouldn't have been surprised. I'm like, well, because I know, and I think I said earlier that the split was in 1986, because that's what I thought. It was actually 1984. The split between the FLDS and what's known as Centennial Park happened in 1984. That was like, but he said there was kind of splitting before that, but like 84 was like the hard split. And so, so anyway, it just reminded me of that. But so they had all these really old hymn books, and it really reminded me of the 70s growing up as a little kid. And I asked about primary. They don't have primary. It sounds like Sunday school is done at home with your family. Sacraments done at home with your family. And so it's just kind of a worship service, but it brought me back to the 70s. That was a long time ago. So as far as the style and everything, and a lot of, even some of the things, the one guy talked about women's livers. I was like, women's livers? I haven't heard that since the 70s when the ERA was going on. So that was funny. Women's liberation. Women's livers. That just made me laugh to hear that phrase. It's been so long since I heard that. So anyway, the coolest thing, so that the meeting ends about 2.5 hours later. They always say the meeting's like whenever the Spirit directs them to close the meeting, that's what they do. So they could be as short as 2 hours. Mine went 2.5. But it was a good meeting. Like there's something, I think there's something to say. Josh Thompson, in my interview with him a few weeks ago, talked about how it seems like the LDS just read their talks and nobody does that. Like nobody does that. And for the most part, they were really good. There was one guy I thought kind of rambled a little bit, but it was like held my attention. I was thinking, because I didn't have quite enough hymn books, because they're the familiar LDS hymns that I'm used to, but I didn't necessarily know the words. And I wanted to pull out my phone to look at the hymns, but I was like, I didn't see anybody else doing it, so I was like, guess better not. So I did. So anyway, but yeah, it was very, very interesting. The coolest thing was I met a person from Centennial Park about 2 years ago, it seems like. And so when the guy conducting the meeting he was calling out Tom, but he said Brother Bennett. And it was funny because his wife was Jackie, was the one. And they said, is that so-and-so's wife? And I was like, I know that guy. And then when he heard Brother Bennett, because he didn't know Tom, because Tom's a new member of the church. So he thought the speaker was talking about me. So he knew he said he'd seen me walk in, and I didn't see him. But he invited me over for dinner afterwards, and I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And so spent 4 hours. It was awesome. And I was like, can I get my camera? And they were like, no. But it was a super fun conversation. It was awesome. Like, we went all over the place. There was also a guy there who I guess had also been invited over for dinner, and he's like, he introduced himself to me. He's from Texas. And he's like, yeah, and I want to get baptized. And it sounds like he's currently LDS. And but like, he was just like, oh wow. Like, I mean, he just assumed I was interested. And I'm interested. I'm not interested in joining. But and then so of course, I got to talk about the Strangites and the Bickertonites and the RLDS and the Community of Christ and all these churches. And because the guy was sitting next to me at dinner, and I go, I bet you didn't know there were so many Mormon churches, did you? And he's like, no, I had no idea. And it sounded like he'd only been a member of the LDS church for like a year or so. But he's like, and I want the fullness of the gospel. So the I guess I'll call them sermons, because we would call them talks in the LDS church. But, they were definitely from the heart. There were a few, like, really, it brought me back to like LeGrand Richards. If any of you ever listen to LeGrand Richards talk, or even Ezra Taft Benson in the 70s, like, he could get up there, and even I think Kimball even pounded the pulpit a few times. You don't see that anymore in the LDS church, but there were some, I would say, kind of Baptist style sermons or whatever. But it was definitely, because it's funny, because in a lot of ways, there were some similarities with the Bickertonites, because they do their services very similarly. And I mean, with the Bickertonites, there were a lot of similarities between Centennial Park and the Bickertonites, but the Centennial Park felt more at home to me, and maybe it was because I heard a lot more Doctrine and Covenants and Joseph Smith. And in fact, I was kind of surprised in their chapel. in the back, like right above the pulpit, was it didn't really surprise me that Joseph Smith was there. In the LDS, I think if there was a picture there, it would more likely be Jesus Christ. And so that was kind of interesting. And then over to my right, they had like Brigham Young and Martin Harris and Heber C. Kimball, I think. I don't know, there was a fourth one there. I can't remember, but there were 4 pictures of early church leaders. So they definitely revere early church leaders. Because you're not going to see that. Like, I mean, you'll see a Brigham Young here and there, maybe, but especially not in the newer churches. It's usually more Jesus focused. And so, in fact, one of the members asked me, I think he attended an LDS funeral recently, and he said something to the effect of, "We follow Joseph Smith and Jesus Christ." And he asked me, like, would that offend any LDS people? Because it sounded like he got kind of a little bit of a like stunned look or reaction or something like that. And she's like, I thought that was very LDS. I'm like, well, we'd probably reverse the order. But yeah, I didn't have any issues with it or whatever. But yeah, anyway, so, but it was very fun. I regaled them with like all my, hey, I went to the Cutlerite Church and I went to the Hedrickite Church. And you know what the Hedrickite are? But yeah, and going back to that, the Hedrickite and the Centennial Park, I mean, in a lot of ways there were similarities, but I felt more kind of at home at Centennial Park than Bickertonites. Not that I didn't feel at home at Bickertonites, but it just felt, and I think, and maybe it's just, like, the Bickertonites are very Book of Mormon and very Bible. But I don't know. It was just, there's something a little bit more familiar about Centennial Park than there was with the Bickertonites. But the Bickertonites was also familiar. And even like, I attended the Church of Christ Temple Lot church. And so that was interesting. Anyway, so it was super fun. So because my schedule is pretty flexible, because I didn't get to drive around in the daylight and it's dark now, and so there's nothing to see in the dark. So I'm going to spend one more night here. I'm actually in Hurricane, Utah. Here's my hotel room. And so I'm going to go back tomorrow, and you guys can come along with me, and we're going to kind of drive around, see what's there. So just, anyway, it'll be super fun. But those were kind of my impressions from church. I'm hoping I didn't take any notes. I was speaking by the Spirit. But anyway, it was super fun. And so come with me tomorrow and we'll tour the community. All right. So I spent the night in Laverkin, Utah, my first time with the Ramada. And so shout out to the Ramada. And by the way, there was no paid endorsement for that. Wish there was. I'm on my way out to Centennial Park. I was just thinking about something that I forgot to mention last night. So I was about 30 minutes from, less than 20 minutes from Centennial Park right now, Centennial Park. And so I had to tell you, I've talked a few times about Polygamy USA, the National Geographic Channel, and what they described as the mission president. There's a guy named Arthur Hammond in the TV show. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I'll run into that guy. And I did. Here's the funniest thing. So I met him and I said, I've seen you on TV. And then he said, I've seen you on TV. And I was like, you're kidding me. And so I talked about him playing, or not playing, playing himself on Polygamy USA. And I guess that was I thought there was another season, but I guess that's the only season. And he thought that National Geographic, they had to translate stuff. Because I asked him about being the mission president. He's like, yeah, that's not really true. But anyway, I don't understand what the issue was there. But then I said, so what did you see me on? And he said he'd watched my video
when I went to the Fundamentalist Temple in Missouri. I think, if I remember right, one of his wives was cousins with Tom Zitting, who was the guy in Missouri that gave me the temple tour. So I'm hoping to get Tom on in hopefully September. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, it's super fun. It's interesting to see how everybody has relatives in every other polygamous group, and so that was super fun to meet Arthur Hammond, and he was even better in person than he was on TV. So I'm not sure who I was. Anyway, he was super cool. Okay, there was one other thing I forgot to mention yesterday that I wanted to mention today. So of course, Centennial Park and the FLDS split in 1984, and so they do, because I made this statement about, well, I was trying to say you guys used to be the same group, and I said, well, you used to be FLDS, and he was like, oh, no. And so anyway, at the worship service yesterday, um, I guess Apostle stood up, I think, and he told the story about Rulon Jeffs, which took me back because I knew that they don't want to be associated with FLDS. But of course, Rulon is Warren Jeffs' father, and so it talked about his time as a missionary in England with President Hinckley. They knew each other. I think they were companions. And Rulon Jeffs came home and got married to Zola Brown, who was Hugh B. Brown's daughter. And so the story, as told from the speaker in the worship service yesterday, was that Rulon Jeffs was, but he saw the light. He knew he needed to practice polygamy. Of course, Zola did not like that, and Hugh B. Brown was very upset about that, and told Rulon, "Hey, you need to toe the line, or we're going to take your." The way they said it was, "We're going to take your family away." I mean, they got a divorce basically. Zola and Rulon got a divorce. They had 2 kids, and with the Centennial Park telling of it, Rulon was willing to give up his family for the greater good, to sacrifice his family for the greater good, and that I think. Well, and then we went into Heber J. Grant. It's so funny to me because in the LDS Church, I mean, we know Heber J. Grant was a prophet, but we don't talk about him like fundamentalists do. But I've said he's kind of public enemy number 1 for them, because he was the one that went after the polygamists, the third manifesto. Like they said the date, which was 1933. I wish I could remember what the date was, but it's December 7th is the day of that live in infamy. For fundamentalists, the day of infamy is whatever the day was of the third manifesto in 1933. And so that was very interesting. And the speaker said that that Heber J. Grant, if he had priesthood, lost his priesthood then. And so it was interesting in talking to them. And I wasn't clear. I think they would have said Hugh B. Brown, lost his priesthood too, but I wasn't. I'm not sure on that. So at any rate, they don't like Heber J. Grant. They don't like Hugh B. Brown necessarily. And I mentioned I was surprised to hear about Rulon Jeffs, because we always think of him as FLDS. Like he's the guy that changed FLDS from a priesthood council model to the Council of Friends model, the Council of 7, as the leadership. And so So it's very interesting to hear their story, and because that's not even, it's hardly a footnote in LDS history. Like, this is something we talk about. I'm familiar with it because I'm a history nerd, but yeah. Anyway, so it was very interesting to hear how they view it. Um, I also had a conversation with a member about Christina Rosetti's book on Joseph Musser, because I know the Peterson group I had mentioned earlier that they had used Christina's book as a lesson in Relief Society that I got to attend for the Peterson group, and they didn't like it. Like, I talked to a few people, and they did not like Christina's book, and they said, "Well, Christina took their side," and I'm like, "Whose side?" The AUB side. And so I don't know exactly. I want to have another conversation, but I want to know exactly what their issues were. But they were like, "Yeah, that was wrong," and she was just believing everything they said. Like, it was propaganda for the AUB. And Peterson Group is a kind of a break off from the AUB. Yeah, so it was interesting to hear about Rulon Allred also. I don't know fundamentalist history as good as they do. That's for dang sure. So they're throwing out names that I'm struggling with remembering. But I kind of like John Lloyd Barlow. I think he was the leader after Musser died. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. And so anyway, it was super fun, like deep dive into fundamentalist history. And I know better than the average Joe, but out here I'm a sub-average Joe, that's for dang sure. So I wanted to relate another conversation that I had with a member, and I'm a Centennial Park member. He was surprised that I struggled with naming all, what was it, 17 LDS prophets. And this person said, "I'm still a member of the LDS church, but they don't recognize me. Like, I recognize them, but they don't recognize me." So that's another interesting thing, especially given the speaker, that other speaker's conversation about Heber J. Grant. Like, so there's still some sort of, I don't know if veneration is the right word, but respect for the LDS church. I don't know what they think after Heber J. Grant as far as presidents of, I think he called them presidents of the church, but not prophets. Definitely not prophets. So that was interesting. And I had something else I was going to say. I forgot what it was, but when I remember, I'll tell you. All right. So I'm pretty sure we just passed these. I think this is Airport Road. It is Airport Avenue. And so and you can see the airport sign there. I don't know. I'm sure it's a tiny airport out here. But what does that say? I can't read the sign, just like a corner or something. But this is the road to Centennial Park. And so we're going to check it out here. Oh, they didn't put their flag at half-mast for Jimmy Carter. There was a semi-joke, but mostly serious thing about how could anybody be a Democrat during church yesterday. Found that interesting, that apparently, yeah, so they must not like Jimmy Carter, I'm guessing, because he died. Well, his funeral, I think, was yesterday. So anyway, this is Central Avenue. You can see around the community, there's this kind of a red cinder block town wall around. So this is kind of the industrial area. This is the way I came. Kind of got lost a little bit yesterday, but it wasn't bad. And I'm going to kind of show you around town here. But yeah, you can see that red cinder block wall over there. And I'm pretty sure this is where I turned. and we're going to go to the high school / church. We're going to check it out. Yeah, so I think behind that red cinder block wall there is basically Centennial Park. That's where most of the homes are. And that building in front of us is the high school / church. It's definitely a multi-purpose building. Because I remember thinking, I saw a bunch of cars in the parking lot, and I'm like, it must be the right place. And so, yeah, so this, I'm sure they're doing high school today. I might drive through the parking lot here really quick just to kind of see. Wow, they're really dressed up. It's not Sunday. They still got a suit and tie on. That's interesting. So anyway, you can kind of see here. I'm going to turn it off for a second. You can get a little bit better look here. All right. So I was always kind of under the impression that Centennial Park was behind this red brick wall. So we're just going to kind of drive. Oh, wow. What is that? They said something about the Lion House. I wonder if that's the Lion House. That's a nice place. You can see, man, there's some big houses around here. So yeah, this is Centennial Park. This is the community. This is what I didn't get to drive around yesterday. But it's not daylight and I can see, man, these are really nice houses here. That one's under construction. You can see going up. So I believe that this would be kind of a United Order or a consecration neighborhood. And wow, there's a big motorhome there. So ooh, there's a solar paneled something or other parking place. Yeah, these are really nice houses. Wow. Probably most of I don't know. We would always guess that they didn't live in nice houses like this. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a smaller house there. It's definitely a smaller house here. And it's a pretty nice house there. Another nice house there. Yeah, these are really beautiful homes. You can see the red dirt and red canyon country. So these people are definitely well inside Arizona. The interesting thing about Colorado City and Hilldale, which is an FLDS community, unlike this. Oh, Hammond Street, that's interesting. The interesting thing about Hilldale and Colorado City is they were on the literally on the Utah-Arizona border, so that when the feds came or the state or whoever, the police came to do the polygamy raids back in, oh, wow, that's nice. Back in 1951, 53, sorry, it was a 53 raid. I had my numbers wrong. But they could literally walk across the state line. And so Utah and Arizona, when they did that raid in 1953, they coordinated so they could catch everybody or as many people as they could. Because, didn't matter which side of the border you're on then. So anyway, yeah, this is a nice little town, nice little housing development. I would just say I met Christina Rosetti in that intersection there when I came out here the last time with Brian Buchanan. That was a fun little trip. But I wasn't smart enough to take video. So this is why we're taking video this time. Oh, that thing is huge. Wow, there's some big houses here.
So I'm guessing land is a lot cheaper in this area, but it's also very remote. So I'm trying to remember because I know, oh, this might be the cemetery. I came out here with Brian and Christina. Is it the cemetery on the left? No, it's not. But yeah, not sure what you thought of this, but yeah, this is a nicer community than I remember. Nicer than Shark Creek, it seems like, if I remember right. But we'll take you to Shark Creek too. And with Shark Creek is both Colorado City and Hilldale. They just refer to those kind of twin towns as Short Creek. Now, one thing I will say about a house like that, clearly they do not get a lot of snow with flat roofs like that, because in Utah, your roof will cave in if you get from the snow. You have a flat roof like that. But yeah, most of them have regular roofs. So that looks like, I don't know, fire department or something. And there's a lot of trucks there. Holy cow. Lauren Circle. I'm sure that's for Lauren C. Woolley. This is all Centennial Park here. It's a big house. Oh, interesting. I wonder, that's got white on top and red on the bottom. Well, the iron and the soil out here. That's why they have the red clay. In case anybody was wondering, maybe you knew that, but maybe you didn't. Maybe you're not from around here. You can see that's a nice big farm there. That's definitely farming country. So, oh, I'm at a dead end. I guess I'm gonna have to turn around. Well, that's where all the old cars are. You can get a little bit better look here. Now, I just wanted to bring up that story that I forgot to mention. I started to mention it, then I said I forgot what it was. I remembered what it was. So this guy got up to speak, and it was about Rulon Jeffs. I started telling the story and then got sidetracked. But at any rate, I was really surprised because, the FLDS Centennial Park split was pretty rancorous, I think. So I was surprised to hear that Rulon Jeffs, who was the leader of the FLDS church, that they talked about him in the worship service. And so basically the story that they told, it was a story I was familiar with, but it was interesting to hear, a true believing member talk about it. So I'm pretty sure that Rulon Jeffs went on a mission with Gordon B. Hinckley, as I mentioned before, in England. After he got back, Rulon Jeffs married Zola Brown. Zola was the daughter of Hugh B. Brown, and they had 2 children. And as they tell the story, Rulon started studying fundamentalism, became converted, and he was, quote, willing to sacrifice his family so that he could join fundamentalism. And so, of course, Zola, we've had some other interviews. I think Neil Bringhurst, Matt Harris have talked about Hugh B. Brown. But Zola, of course, was not on board with this. Hugh B. Brown, who was in the First Presidency, was not on board with this. And as the story was told, and I think truthfully told, Hugh Brown put a lot of pressure on Rulon Jeffs to not participate in this. And so they didn't quite use these words, but the way that I would say is they were saying that Hugh Brown was using unrighteous dominion in telling Rulon Jeffs not to continue in this road. And of course, he did continue in this road and was excommunicated, divorced Zola. It was a very it was tough on both Rulon and Zola because they loved each other very deeply. But Rulon left his family, joined fundamentalism, and then eventually became a leader of the FLDS church. So I remember talking to a member after the meeting and saying I was kind of surprised because, I always associate Rulon with FLDS and AUB and FLDS. That split that happened in 84 was pretty rancorous, I would say. And, they both view each other as apostates and whatever. But they told that as a faith-promoting story that Rulon was willing. Oh, the other thing, Rulon was willing to give up his family for the principle of polygamy. Now, the other thing that I thought was really interesting that the speaker said regarding both Hugh Brown and Heber J. Grant. Of course, Heber J. Grant was the prophet for the third manifesto. I believe it was 1933, 1934. They actually said the date, but I didn't remember what it was. But Heber J. Grant really turned hard against polygamists and teamed up with law enforcement to go after them. There was a raid in the 30s. There was a raid in 1953. Of course, that was after Grant was gone. But he turned up the pressure, really wanted polygamists arrested, made it a felony in Utah to practice bigamy. And so anyway, with regards to both Grant and Hugh Brown, the speaker said, basically implied that Brown was exercising unrighteous dominion on Rulon Jeffs, and that the priesthood, quote, if he had any before, he lost it then. And same with Heber J. Grant. If he had priesthood, he lost it. And I thought that was very, very interesting to hear that. My ears kind of perked up and was like, oh, this is very interesting to hear. Literally preached over the pulpit. There was a book that they had. I think it's called Priesthood Discourses. If you go to that Bees Marketplace, they've got the Journal of Discourses, and then they have Priesthood Discourses. And I believe he was talking out of that book when he told that. So I found it very, very interesting to hear that story. So I thought I'd show a quick picture from April of 2024 when I went there to Bees. That's Brian Buchanan in the front there with the yellow shirt. And these are the priesthood dispatches that they talked about at church, along with and it's published by the Work of Jesus Christ, Centennial Park, Arizona. I think it's actually owned by a Centennial Park member. But the priesthood discourses are from every year from like 1960 onward, and you can pick those up at Bees. There's also a book by Drew Briney, who I didn't know was a fundamentalist. He's a kind of Facebook friend. There's my friend Amanda Hendricks Komodo. I was surprised that she was interested in that book there. How to Pray and Stay Awake. I thought that was one of the funniest titles. It comes from Max Skousen from 1949. Thanks for listening, and I hope you to continue to enjoy Gospel Tangents. Consider becoming a Patreon or go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get a cool tie, a hat, or even a nice mug. You can also get a sweatshirt. So check it out at gospeltangents.com/shop.